All right, welcome to GolfWRX's 2024 Best Irons list. I am pleasantly, or I guess I'm pleasantly happy that Drew from Second Swing is joining me today. We are going to break down the 2024 Best Iron list. We've got 6 categories. Basically, how we do this every year is we poll fitters across the whole country, and fitters, like Second Swing. And I know some people, if you don't know much about Second Swing, or you basically only remember them from the days of maybe selling secondhand equipment, they are far different now. So, Drew, tell us a little about it. You guys have a ton of locations. You guys do everything from some great deals on some used clubs to brand new equipment to fittings to custom made little small batch runs. I mean, you guys are doing it all, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. It's been awesome to kind of see how things have evolved in my 5.5 years with Second Swing. It's been you're right in that it was pretty much specializing used clubs. I think when I started we were selling new, and the club fitting aspect of things was definitely in play, but certainly not what it is now. And so now we have 2 stores here in the Twin Cities. We've got one down in Scottsdale, which is humongous, by the way. It's like over 30,000 square feet. There is one that opened up in 2023 in just north of Dallas in the Colony, Texas. And then we've got Wilmington, Delaware, sort of by the Philly area, and then Columbia, Maryland, sort of right there in between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. So and it's been awesome to see those stores kind of each really find a place in the market, so to speak, of those areas, and it's been awesome. So you're right, lots of different things besides used clubs nowadays.
Yep, and one of those big things is fitting, and you guys are doing a ton of fittings.
Mm-hmm.
I know you were just saying how you were talking to some of the fitters before we jumped on here, and you guys are just absolutely slammed, with fitting, fitting after fitting today, and that's just kind of how it is. It's kind of part of the season right now. Everybody's getting excited for the new gear, and everybody sees the season starting soon. So you got to get in, get fit, get dialed in, and have the game ready for when spring and summer hit.
Yeah, and here in Minnesota, it is just now courses are back to reopening. We had a couple periods in February or March where it might have opened for, maybe a weekend or something like that. But I think, fingers crossed, we're sort of turning that corner here, and the courses are now just opening.
Well, our headquarters in Detroit, so we're about the same. So we're, same thing. We had a nice little run in February, and now we're just kind of waiting for, for the season to really start. But hopefully the weather will be breaking here shortly. But yeah, Best Irons, like I said, so what we do is, we could basically go out and we talk to fitters across the country from all over the place, every demographic, whatever. I mean, we try to get as many fitters as we can on this. And we basically ask for fitters' input on kind of the 6 different categories we have for irons, and ask them what they're, what irons are fitting people into, what they're seeing success with, and that's how we do this. So we're going to start off. We've got 6 categories. The first one is going to be just best overall. So basically just an overall iron. What are you seeing, kind of the most, what are you seeing success in the fittings? What are you seeing customers respond to really well? And this can be anything from a blade to a super game improvement iron. So we can kind of put anything in here, and I think there's a little bit of a mix, but we're going to start with this. And Drew, I mean, we'll start off at the top of this list here. Best overall, the Srixon ZX5 Mark II. I think Srixon irons over the past couple of years have been, actually probably the past, 7 years, have been absolutely phenomenal. I love the ZX Mark V. I think it's a great blend of that forgiveness and that great look that a player likes, reduced offset. But it's a really solid overall iron that I think you'll see a scratch player play, and you'll see, a 15 to 20 handicap player play. It's just really versatile.
Yeah, I think the great thing about the ZX Mark, the Mark II series as a whole, but specifically the ZX5 is what you mentioned, is just how versatile it is, and players that might have low or even scratch handicaps are looking at that iron and they love the look of it. It can be, you can play it as even a longer iron in your bag, or it even looks good enough to play as a whole set for those players. And then you of course get the forgiveness, you get the technology, as say the rebound frame in there, and some of their tech in the VT sole as well has been really well responded to, off of for the turf interaction piece too.
Yep, definitely. Especially for, us northern guys who play in a little softer conditions. That VT, that Tour V sole is just really, really solid. And like I said, the turf interaction is phenomenal with that iron. The next one on the list, we move to I think it's kind of the grandfather of the hollow body, filled iron, the TaylorMade P790. What are your thoughts on that one?
That one, I mean, geez, every single year, it's one of the favorites in that category, if not the favorite. And over the testing that we've done, it's almost, because there's some varying lofts in that kind of play resistance category. You kind of get anything from really 29 to sort of 31 degrees in there on the 7-iron. And, P790 isn't always the strongest lofted. In fact, I don't think it has really ever been the strongest lofted, but it's always the furthest and has the most ball speed. And it's so kudos to them for sort of developing the technology with speed foam and then speed foam air. Just consistency on the ball speed is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and then this year especially too, kind of how they showed off how each iron is individually designed to make sure that the center of gravity, all that is kind of perfect for each iron. But also, I think my favorite thing about that iron is that it's extremely forgiving. It's long, it's straight, but when you look down at it, it doesn't look like a really big club. Like they've really streamlined the size of it, and I think they make it where if you're a player who needs that help, needs a little distance, you need those things, but you don't want to look down at a club that just isn't attractive to your eye. They've managed to really make a good package packed with all that technology you mentioned. And a player feels good. You feel confident standing over that club, knowing that it just looks good. You're going to hit it well. And if you don't have a great swing, you're still going to be okay. And to me, that's kind of, for me, this latest version of the 790, that's kind of my favorite thing about it.
Yeah, totally. It's been very well received in the bays.
Yep. And then we move on to something kind of a little bit smaller in this best overall category. The title is T150. This was actually my gamer set for pretty much all of 2023. I nicknamed it kind of the cheater set. A guy like me who's clinging on to that 8-9 handicap. You can look down at a player's iron. It's small, it's thin, but you get a bunch of tech. You get a little distance. You get a little forgiveness. You get good feel. It's one of those that I don't have to have my best game to still hit those really well.
Yeah, the T150, great. I mean, I think it was kind of, we were all waiting for this from Titleist in the sense that the T100S and the T100, there was maybe some confusion out there about what the differences were and where they belonged with each other and how much different they were. And so I think for us as fitters here at Second Swing, it was really cool to see them sort of differentiate them in just a little bit different technology. Obviously, the loft was different before. A couple of different things internally were different, but now there's a size difference as well, and it kind of fits right in there between the T100 and T200. And because of that, I think it's gotten just a ton of interest.
Yeah, I mean, when you see a guy like Will Zalatoris put it in play on tour, and then you can go to the local Muni and see me hacking around the course with it. It's a pretty versatile club, and it's going to fit a wide range of players. So they kind of nailed that one. I think with the market on that one, I think they hit just a nice sweet spot with that iron. And then we move on to, I know we mentioned the ZX5, the first iron here, but now the Srixon ZX7 Mark II, so kind of the other sibling of that lineup. But yeah, how do you feel about the ZX7?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what I said about the ZX5 Mark II. It's just, I think the Srixon, and I remember last year with sort of the Members' Choice, Srixon got a ton of love for the irons as well. And I mean, there's good reason for it. They're super they're super forgiving in that for a player's kind of shape, there's a lot of performance packed into the ZX7 model of the Mark II series, but really good look, really good feel, very clean through the turf. There's nothing that you could complain about with this iron.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the ZX7 Mark II, I mean, for the better player, I mean, like you said, you get a little bit of everything. I like, too, that I know over the years, with Srixon models, the 745 was just a cult classic. People, were trying to buy a second set from, a Second Swing to have as a backup. And then, they got into some irons that people kind of either didn't love the shape, whatever. I think this one here, they kind of revised it a little bit. It's a little longer heel to toe, but it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look kind of disproportionate. And honestly, the feel is about as soft as you're going to get with a forged iron. And it's still kind of amazing to me, especially talking with fitters of kind of how under the radar Srixon still is with irons, over the past couple of years. They talk to customers when they come in and they hand them the iron and they kind of go, what is this? It's amazing that people haven't really caught on to how good the Srixon irons are. But the ZX7s, the feel-wise are absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, all the way across the board. Check all the boxes.
Yep. And then for the best overall, the final iron in this category is, again, one that, from talking to fitters, people are really high on, but the Mizuno Pro 245. This one here, kind of a revision from the 225, but I think, again, with cosmetics like the P790, I think Mizuno kind of nailed the cosmetics with this one. When you first pulled it out of the box, I felt like it was a hard time deciphering which was the 241, which was the 245.
Right,
if they would have put no logo on it, they had a really similar look. And yes, it's a little bigger, it's got a touch more offset, but for being, again, a hollow body iron, multi-piece, Mizuno nailed the feel. When you hit it, you're going to know it's a Mizuno. It's soft, it's responsive, it's solid. But the 245, I think they did a really good job of just making it a little bit better than the 225.
I think so too. And one of the things that we noticed in the testing as well was it seems like the 245 also actually spins a little bit more and more consistently than the 225. And I think that's something that our fitters have kind of been wanting for a long time in that category, is it seems like too often there are players' distance irons that don't have enough spin or don't generate enough spin for a large category of the golfers out there. And so to see something that will spin more and more consistently, keep the ball in the air, give you that descent angle and that landing angle that you need to kind of hold the greens. So really, really good work by Mizuno with these ones.
Yep. So that is the best overall category, which again can kind of encompass anything. We leave it kind of open. And again, the rundown there, the Srixon ZX5 Mark II, TaylorMade's P790, the Titleist T150, Srixon ZX7 Mark II, and the Mizuno Pro 245. All right, so Drew, now we're going to move on to most tech-packed. So these are the irons that, we kind of look at and say, man, they're really pushing the limits of what's going on with iron design. Many of these, I think, pretty much all of them are multi-piece. They kind of are trying to get everything, whether they're trying to get a little more distance, forgiveness, feel, all that. Like it's one of those where these are the irons I feel from each company that they're really kind of putting everything they have into it. And again, it doesn't really limit it to a handicap range or anything like that. We're just, kind of looking for irons that companies are just trying to just stuff all that engineering into them. And we start off at the top with an iron that I think, not that I was surprised was here, but I was kind of shocked it was as high on the list here. But the Callaway Paradigm AI Smoke. From everything I've been talking to people, it is an absolute distance machine. I have one here. I haven't actually got out to hit it yet, so I'm excited to. But the look is good. I think Callaway kind of, again, is doing a good job making stuff that doesn't look super game improvement while giving you the benefits of a super game improvement club. But, they're hot. They go a long ways. And for a lot of people, they're looking to add that to their bag.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about this AI smart face and what goes into it and kind of the marketing that Callaway does for it, right? But I think in our testing, that's really, really good on, the missed hits that you might have, say, low on the face or maybe even towards the toe or the heel. You are seeing a lot of performance retention on those shots. And so I think that's where over the years, Callaway's been using their supercomputers, if you want to call it that, and sort of using AI to design the clubs. Slowly but surely, you're kind of really seeing how much of an impact that can have. And I think this face design on these irons and really throughout the AI Smoke sort of lineup, you're seeing that off-center performance is really good.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. I mean, they've gone through so many face revisions from what they tell you that,
right.
They're really starting to get it down. I mean, woods and irons both. I mean, it's pretty impressive what they're doing with those faces. Mm-hmm. And then an iron that, we just kind of finished talking about just before, but TaylorMade's P790 in here again. And I think, you and I kind of both touched on it. The tech that's in this iron there's a lot of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what they do next with if they're going to do another iron in this category. I mean, P790 has about everything you need, and you talked about earlier is just how great it looks too. So I truly don't know and what's next. I'm no golf club engineer, so I mean, there's probably something out there that they're working on over at TaylorMade, but there's not much more they can add to it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and with these hollow bodies, it's just kind of crazy to see what they do inside, and like I said. Before, TaylorMade did a good job of kind of promoting the fact that these irons are all different kind of designs internally. But it's amazing where they have little tungsten weights, and they've, like you mentioned, they've got the speed foam in there, and there's all these different things that they're able to do inside this. And then when you look at it from the back, it just kind of looks almost blade-ish in a way. Like it's just got a really classic, simple design. And you're right. I mean, them being able to package all that tech in there is pretty impressive. But the other thing about that I kind of failed to mention the first time too was it isn't a crazy high launching iron either. I think some people look at that iron as their flagship and it's super forgiving. it doesn't come out straight up in the air. I mean, it does have a little bit of a penetrating ball flight. So if you're a player who thinks it may not be for you because you hit it high anyway, it's an iron that, like I said, doesn't come out crazy high. You might be surprised at how well that plays.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we move into another Titleist iron, the Titleist T350. I think people kind of forget about this iron a little bit with the success of the 100, the 150, and the 200. But what are your thoughts on the T350?
Yeah, so stable. There's, I know Titleist has done a ton with this category in terms of their tungsten weighting and the strategy behind that and strategic placement. But it's again, it's a similar story in that, with the AI smoke, you kind of had the club face design and how forgiving. And so I think Titleist same way in that offsetter, the off-center performance is really, really good in the 350. And anybody that's mid to high handicap that, feels like they're maybe losing some performance when they don't hit the center of the face, I think this is a really good option to start with.
Yeah, I was really impressed with it when I got to hit it when I went to do my T-Series fitting, last year. It was impressive because I got to hit it, and while it wasn't the iron that made it into my bag, it was really impressive to see just how high and straight it went, and to what you're saying too, that forgiveness built in, the face, the ball speed. You just didn't see a huge variation in ball speed when you hit it dead center, when you missed a little, sat on the toe, you hit it a little low. All those spots, the ball still carried, and when you looked at those carry yardages, you just weren't penalized for a big miss hit. You could hit it a little off the toe, and that ball probably still made it to maybe the front of the green. You weren't sitting in the greenside bunker. You were on the front of the green, and you had a putt, for par or birdie or whatever it was. So, and again, as I guess I'm like the fashion guy, the package is good. I think the previous 350 or 300 was a little on the big side. It was a little chunky, and they've definitely slimmed it down on the 350, and again, given a much better look. I think there was somebody on tour who had like a 3 or 4 iron in the bag as kind of like a utility iron
I think it's
for a short time as well.
I think he might have the I think 3 iron or 4 iron as sort of his driving iron. Kudos. That says something, right? That the club has to look good enough for those guys because those guys are so aesthetics oriented, and so if it looks good enough for them to play, then it obviously looks pretty darn good.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. If it can go in those bags, their eyes are pretty specific on what they want and what they need. So, and then we get again to the Srixon ZX5 Mark II, and again, I know some of these kind of make it onto multiple lists, but yeah, the ZX5, it's just so good. You get good feel with it. There's probably not too many irons in that category if you look at kind of the forgiveness and distance that sound and feel as good as the ZX5. And also, as I mentioned before, the amount of that little bit of offset that it has is so minute that even that player like myself who kind of hits it left, you play a big draw, you're not going to be scared of it. You can go into that iron knowing I'm going to be able to hit it straight. I'm not going to be worried about, it going farther left than I need to go. And, that sound and feel is just really solid.
Yeah, add another one to the Srixon trophy case, I guess, because it's the performance that you get and the technology packed in here in sort of this tech packed category. You would not envision an iron just looking at the ZX5 Mark II and how good it looks that this would fall into this category. But as you said, all the things you mentioned about the performance, consistency, and we had talked about versatility early on, how it can be a weapon for, pretty much darn near any golfer that might be up to like a 20 handicap or maybe even a little bit higher. So really good from Srixon.
Yeah, they did a great job with that one. And then to round out the category, an iron that is kind of, I feel like when you say irons, this is what you think of, but it is the Ping G430. I think, being Ping, the G, whatever number you want to put after it in the series, whatever they come out with next, whatever, it is just always on the list. They're a company that just doesn't, they don't mess it up. Especially with this iron, it's their bread and butter. And the G430, again, I think they've done a great job of slimming the package down, making it look really good from address, because I know even myself, I've never been the biggest Ping fan when I set something down. I love the performance. They absolutely work, but I've never loved the look. And when you look at the G430, you can tell that they took a lot of time to make this thing look good. And for those players like me who maybe would have skipped it just out of the visuals, now you're going, whoa, wait a minute. This is a really good looking iron, but super easy to hit, forgiving. It just, it's a performer.
Yeah, I think Ping is sort of, I think they're kind of aware in the sense that there's a certain segment of players that don't love the aesthetics or love the sound right away, because the performance has always been there for Ping. Like, there's never been a doubt about the performance and forgiveness of their clubs, especially in this category. But definitely they're taking some steps to address that and apply some different technologies to improve the sound and feel, and then you mentioned the look as well as much cleaner with this iron versus say G425 or even other prior models. So I mean, fantastic. G430 is I mean, our fitters just can't say enough good things about it. How good it is for so many players out there.
Yeah, and with fitters with that too. I mean, Ping also giving you kind of the option for ordering directly, the power spec, or a slightly more traditional loft. I mean, giving fitters an option there that if they have a player who wants a little extra distance or needs to take a little spin off, we can order them strong and do that. If we have a player who needs to hit a little higher, needs a little spin, something like that, you don't have to worry about. It's not a big thing. Ping just has it, and right. You have those options for the fitters to really dial in players, and not everybody does that, and that's something that that kind of is a little bit special with Ping, and just give some more options to get players dialed into the right iron, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I think one other thing on that too is just with sort of this increased popularity of the game, especially sort of in the younger generations. What you have is a lot of players that might not be the most skilled or consistent ball strikers. So you have players that might have they're in their 20s maybe, they're playing a lot of golf. They have some speed, but they might not have the most consistency. And so the G430 in that retro spec were players that can, they need to make sure they might already generate a ton of speed, right? A ton of spin, or in the power spec on the same token, and kind of make sure that stays down, right? They have all these options, and it's so easy to order that with G430. So it's really, I mean, it touches so many players. It's really good.
Yeah, no, a great iron. So this was the most tech pack, and again, you're looking at the Callaway Paradigm AI Smoke, TaylorMade's P790, the Titleist T350, Srixon ZX5 Mark II, and the Ping G430. So now we're going to move into irons kind of built for people with kind of the slower club head speed. Usually in this category, you're looking for a little more height, a little more speed, a little more distance, sometimes some lighter weight, whatever, but just anything to kind of help that player who's, the slower club head speed. And I think with this one, there's a little confusion too, because some people I think automatically throw in there like, oh, well, it's super high handicap. And that isn't the case necessarily. I mean,
right.
like you mentioned with, players picking up this game and becoming more popular, and, players in their 20s or early 30s who are just athletic, strong, produce a ton of club head speed, but they're maybe not very consistent. The opposite can happen. You could have an older player who used to play college golf or high-level golf who is extremely consistent, very good player, strikes it well, but still needs a little more distance, a little more height, just to kind of help them play and enjoy the game a little bit more. So, not everything has to necessarily be high handicap with this speed or whatever. Things can change now in the game where those things don't hold true as well anymore. But the first one is kind of out of everything in the list, this was kind of the biggest surprise to me, at least. The first one on the list, the Mizuno JPX 923 Hot Metal HL. I remember when Mizuno kind of came out with the hot metal stuff and kind of expanded the line. We're seeing new irons from them. The HL was something I was like, well, it needed, Mizuno needed this in the line to go after that player who needs a little more height and needs some distance. And I just didn't know it'd be as successful as this, but it's a Mizuno iron. It feels good. It sounds good. They just do a really nice job with those type of things with the customer. But here we're seeing performance as well that can help out these players with the slower club head speed.
Yeah, I think, Mizuno may have been the one to kind of set the trend of sort of the quote-unquote HL model in the irons.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing other brands sort of take after them and offering something a little higher lofted, maybe a lighter weight. And so that's exactly what JPX 923 did. And, there's no doubting the kind of chromoly material and how that is valuable for the technology of these irons. And I know the team at Mizuno does a ton of things, obviously, too, with look and feel. The Mizuno feel, right? That doesn't just apply to their players' irons. It's also very, very good in these ones as well. So in that sense, I'm not surprised at all to see this model here.
Yeah. No, it was just one of those, it is, and I think also, how I mentioned you have those players who are really good, maybe competitive type players. They know the Mizuno name. They maybe owned a set, played them, and to transition into something that they're familiar with, yet it's just designed differently for their game how it is now, is probably a little easier transition. Because as a fitter, you probably know better than even me. There are certain things certain kind of speed bumps you run into in a fit, and some of them can be, brands, look, sound, whatever. There's different things that people object to that aren't just look at the numbers, here it is. There's other things there. So if you can get by one of those and say, hey, you played MP33s back in the day.
Right.
Now you're just moving to the JPX 923. So that makes that transition probably a little bit easier.
For sure, for sure.
And then we move into the next one there, the Callaway Paradigm AI Smoke HL. And interesting enough, a lot of times when you see HL irons, and interesting enough, this list, all but one iron will have an HL behind it. So I almost don't need to say it. But this one here, the HL, how do you feel about the HL?
I mean, it's a little bit of like a bigger brother almost to like the standard AI Smoke, just a little bit bigger in the sense that it takes up it's like a larger top line, barely, right? But it's definitely not anything that I guess is off-putting. It still looks pretty solid and launches the ball much higher than the standard one. And I really think this sort of HL category is coming at the right time, because I mentioned earlier, like a lot of golfers are, maybe the lofts have become too strong and they're not getting the ball high enough or not getting enough spin. And so I'm loving that this category has kind of popped up on this HL. And the Paradigm AI Smoke HL, it delivers, and all of its, that smart face technology is in there, and it delivers for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and it does. It has a little different look. I mean, a lot of times I feel like some of the HL stuff is just kind of like slightly tweaked versions of the standard.
Yeah.
And this is a completely different iron. I mean, you look at the back cavity, all that. And I like with Paradigm, they kind of made it look a little nicer than the, say, Rogue ST stuff and all that. It just looks a little higher end with some of the kind of the finishes they do and all that. But I mean, a ball speed machine, it just goes like crazy, and it's easy to get in the air. And it does have a little more offset, a little thicker top line, like you mentioned, which for some players in this category, like I use my dad a lot of times as an example. He wants to know there's a lot of club there, and if he misses it, he's okay. So a lot of people in this category don't mind a little bit more of that. And just overall a good looking package from Callaway.
For sure.
And then we move into the TaylorMade QI HL, and this one I think is probably a great evolution from its older sibling, the Stealth HD, which it performed amazing, but had a look that not everyone loved. It was a little bit unconventional. This is a very traditional iron, ton of weight low, gets the ball in the air very easily, and it just looks like a normal iron, which is nice, because HD didn't. And this one, I feel like if you hand it to a customer or hand it to a person at a fitting, they're going to accept it a lot easier than the previous model. But you're still going to get that high launch, still going to get a lot of ball speed out of it, and still going to get that low spin performance.
Yeah, I mean, Stealth HD was, if there was a player getting fit that was not about the aesthetics, and they were in that, I mean, Stealth HD was a winner so often. And so it was cool to see TaylorMade sort of take a lot of the same, technologies or the same philosophies into the QI HL. And then, like you mentioned, kind of make it look like sort of a golf iron, a standard iron model. And it works. And there's also some like kind of sneaky sort of anti-slice properties about sort of the way it's built, which can be really big help for a lot of players. I mean, we know, there's different percentages thrown out there that, if it's 60 or 70 or whatever, of players that are in that kind of double-digit handicaps are slicers more than they are, hitting draws or hook shots. So that is a really big, nice benefit for TaylorMade with this iron.
Yeah, that face technology, they kind of designed that face where it flexes slightly differently, and it was pretty interesting, because I think when you think, you mentioned, that kind of the anti-slice or, helping that fade, I think a lot of people just think, well, you just shove a bunch of weight in the heel and, there you go, your problem solved. And that isn't the case, and TaylorMade kind of went about it a different way, and it's pretty interesting to see that, I'm not going to say, that's working and that's doing it, but the iron is definitely showing, that it's getting in a lot of hands, and a lot of players are benefiting from it. And then we get into another, the Ping, the G430, but the HL version. And again, HL, this one here, like I think you mentioned it at the beginning of this category, lightweight can help a lot of players, swing a little faster, a little easier, turn it over. Here we go, Ping G430 HL.
Yeah, I can vouch for this one, as my wife is fit into the G430 HL, nice. Both the driver and the irons, and so they've been great for her. She's gotten a lot better in her game, so that's my endorsement of the G430 HL. It's fantastic, a lot really stable, and then especially for the maybe players that need a little bit lighter weight or need extra swing speed. I mean, it's fantastic, and you'll be surprised if you're playing sort of a quote unquote standard iron model, or maybe haven't thought about going with that sort of HL or lighter weight version. moving into this, you're going to see a pretty drastic difference in your iron distances.
Yeah, and this one here, a lot of the fitters I talked to, over the past week or so, have also said how great it is that Ping kind of designed it around. They didn't design it around like shaft flex, and you can go and get a really lightweight, very flexible shaft that doesn't just say A flex or
Right.
R2 or whatever. It's just kind of gone by kind of the weight and the cat. They just kind of describe it as the weight and all that, and that way nobody has to kind of feel like their pride is a little bit hurt that, hey, I'm playing a little more flexible shaft. Even though it performs really well, a lot of people, again, well, I've been playing regular or stiff or whatever for all these years, and now I'm moving into something a little softer. Ping kind of built this thing around, let's kind of pull as much of the ego as we can out of it. And if somebody just looks in your bag, you're playing Ping G430s. There's really nothing different, and but it does still give you that help with that being an overall lightweight package, and being able to swing it faster, hit it higher, and just have more fun with it. And I think being able to pull some of that ego out of it makes people enjoy it that much more. They're not worried about somebody pulling an iron out of their bag and looking at it and going, "Oh, you play this or whatever." They can just go enjoy and know they have a set of irons that everybody else at the club may have.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure.
And then we move into the Titleist T350 again. This one rounds out the slower club head speed. I think it fits in nicely here. I think it's that higher launching iron, at least from my experience with it. But yeah, Titleist again with the 350, high, straight. They've brought it, they dialed in the sound, the feel a little bit, so it definitely sounds and feels better. And you mentioned with some of the Strixon stuff, I think the turf interaction on the Titleist stuff this year is far better than it was in past years.
Yeah, it may be worth a little bit of an extra bonus, if you will, for having the only non-HL model in this category.
Exactly.
With the T350. So, everything we talked about earlier, it's fantastic, high launch, very forgiving, and you could see why someone with a slower swing speed, I guess, in this category could see a lot of benefit from the T350.
Yep. So that is the slower club head speed, or the slower swing speed category. The Mizuno JPX 923 Hot Metal HL. Callaway's Paradigm AI Smoke HL, the TaylorMade QI HL, Ping G430 HL, and the Titleist T350. So now we move into the shop makers category, which these are kind of generated more around better players, players who probably like to work the ball a little bit, whether they flight it high, flight it low, work it right to left, or just slightly better players who want to hit it straight, who just want a little bit of a more player's iron. So these are the ones that I think when you look at GolfWRX, these are the ones that most of our audience is checking out. But these here are pretty much standards. When you start looking here, to me, there's only about one that jumps out as a little bit of a surprise. But we start off here with the Titleist T100, and it's one of the most successful irons on tour that Titleist has ever had. Some of the best players in the world are playing it, and it sounds good, it feels good, and not only can you work the ball, you get a little bit of forgiveness with it as well. So I think it's just that great package for that single digit or skilled player out there.
Yeah, I think if you were to poll just second swing fitters, I know you'd get a very large majority of them that would say T100 is the most successful player's iron in terms of club fittings here. Just how beautiful it is, but also it does, like you mentioned, it has all those performance characteristics where there is a little bit of forgiveness there, but you can work it however you need to. It's just a huge percentage of those, quote unquote, better ball strikers get what they need out of the T100.
Yep. Yeah, and you don't really have to savvy. I feel like the T100 is, and almost every iron in this list is going to be one of those ones where, a player who is playing a true, say, single piece forged cavity back, or a blade of some sort previously, you can move into any one of these irons, and probably you're still going to get the feel, you're still going to get the workability, the spin, all that. But then when you don't have a great day, you're still going to be better off here because you're going to get away with a little bit of those misses.
For sure.
And then you move on. Again, I think no surprise, Strixon ZX7 Mark II. We've kind of mentioned it once already, but again, a great iron for, the better player, the skilled player. It's just, it feels great. It looks great. There's really, Strixon nailed it. And that's why I think we saw ZX7 to Mark II. There weren't huge, massive changes because there didn't need to be.
Right. I was going to make that exact point. Like, it seems like the previous ZX sort of generation was so successful in the sense that I think it did elevate Strixon in the spotlight a little bit more than it was before, and that's I think sort of maybe what kind of sparked this popularity and success for the Mark II models. And the ZX7, we've already talked about it enough. I mean, I think the trophy case for Srixon continues to build. Like there's so much to like about Srixon, and now we're just on the precipice, it feels like, of Srixon becoming really up there as a true contender with, say, the most popular manufacturers out there, because all they're doing is just churning out really, really good iron models.
Yeah. No, they nailed it. I mean, like I said, with this one here, I mean, the amount of tour play, the free agents on tour who play this iron, and then, when you go out into, a place and you play with better players, it's amazing how many sets of these you see in the bag. And again, as I mentioned, kind of in the first category, just shocked that these, are kind of fly under the radar every year, it seems like, in terms of, people who just don't know about them. But, really solid iron. Now, here's the one that did kind of surprise me a little bit in this category. I thought we would see its bigger brother in this one, but the Callaway Apex CB, I thought we would see the Pro here from the fitters, but the CB made it on instead. And yeah, the CB, what are your kind of thoughts on the CB? I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, so that it's interesting. It feels like, and this is just sort of just in talking with the fitters, because I haven't actually personally hit the Apex Pro and Apex CB too much. We did some initial testing on our YouTube video, I guess, but it's almost as if the Apex Pro CB is a little bit more players distance oriented this time in this series than in the past, and so maybe that's kind of contributing to sort of the Apex CB falling in here. But I mean, everybody that's I've talked to about it has loved it, how it looks at it dressed, the feel. The only thing for there's a section of golfers out there that don't like that badge on the back of the club. But other than that, it's fantastic and has been received really well. Really, good feel, can work the ball whichever way you need to, and a little bit of forgiveness there too, as we talked about some of these other ones.
Yeah, and in terms of looks, I mean, the Apex CB is probably one of my favorite shapes. I like a little more rounded, slightly softer club. So I love the look of them. I actually have them in a set of the triple play. So I've got a little of each in there. And the CBs, I mean, like you said, they feel great. I love the look of them. I think they've got just the right amount of just having a hair of offset. They're compact. And yeah, they are a little bit more forgiving. I also like kind of that pre-worn leading edge they did on the new Pro stuff. The turf interaction with it up here where it's soft is just really good. It gets through the turf really quickly. And I mean, it's just a really solid iron. And I think you're right. I mean, I think the Pro getting a little bit bigger, being multi-piece and all that, I think it probably did kind of shift itself more to that player's distance than the true shot makers category. But yeah, the CB is a solid option for anybody who's looking for that soft feeling cavity back that they can go out and get a touch of forgiveness out of, but still have that good soft feel to it. And then one that I don't think either one of us would be shocked is on this list, no matter where. Mizuno Pro 243, the 243. I was actually, when I first opened it out of the box, I was a little taken back by it. I felt it looked a little bigger, chunkier, a little heftier. The sole looked a little wider than the previous 223. But then you go out and hit it. And I tell you what, for being kind of a shot maker's type club, it is a really straight club. It's easy to hit. I won't call it high launching, but it's an easy mid launching iron. And I was just impressed with how playable that iron is for even the people who kind of creep up into the handicap who still want to play this type of iron. They can kind of get away with it, and it feels good. It's a much more playable iron than I expected when I got my hands on it.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you're saying in that it's I think the 223 and 243 in the Mizuno Pro lineup the last couple of generations now, both of them have been a little bit more kind of distance oriented than maybe past players' cavities from Mizuno, going back to, say, the MC18 or the kind of the MP MC. There's it seems like they're adding a little bit more juice to it, and not that that's a bad thing at all. It still does deliver in terms of the shot making, and the incredible Mizuno feel is still there, so you're not missing out on that. It just seems like there's an element of extra distance that it's almost kind of more comparable to, say, T150 than T100, and if we're relating it to this category.
Yeah, I agree with that as well too. When I hit it, I kind of felt the same thing. I was like, well, it may not be full as hot as T150. It's closer to that than a T100 when you put them out there. But yeah, just a really pleasant iron to hit. I was impressed with it when I kind of judged the book by the cover, and I was very impressed once I dug into the pages. So another good iron from Mizuno there. And then another one that I personally had a lot of really good experience with is the Ping Blueprint S. What do you think about the new forged Ping?
Yeah, it's awesome. I think Ping has knocked out these blueprint irons S&T out of the park, and I think the S is a great combination of, it really does kind of look at a dress like you wouldn't. I don't think you would guess there even is a cavity in the back. It kind of looks like muscle back. So I think the purists out there are really gonna really like this if they haven't tested it yet. But super soft feel. I think it was sort of a category of Ping iron that they maybe needed to sort of dial in a little bit, was sort of these truly kind of fully forged, players irons that are really compact. They had the original blueprint several years ago that was just ultra tiny and didn't quite get the popularity that maybe they wanted. But the S&T, I think, have really checked the boxes.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first first kind of pulled them out of the box, and you see all the tour play, how fast that these tour players are adopting to it.
Yeah,
I kind of was a little intimidated, going, "Oh, these might be a little demanding." And as you mentioned, they feel great. I know the original answers that were forged were kind of a little bit on the firmer side.
Yeah.
These are definitely soft. You could put them up against pretty much any forged cavity back out there, and they're going to compete. But again, I think these are a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more playable than they look or than you may perceive them to be. And I think the sole, again, really good turf interaction. That slightly longer blade length lets you get away with a little poor shot. It still stays on line pretty well. And yeah, from a dress, it's probably one of the best looking Ping irons they've ever made. I mean, it's not quite as intimidating as Blueprint T. It's got a little more mass there, a little more real estate, but they've done it very well, and I think they kind of nailed that iron. And this is one I think you're going to see a lot of better players move over to Ping irons, who kind of, this wasn't really a category for them, and now I think you're going to see a lot of better players move into this iron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely can see that happening. It's fantastic. I loved it when I tested it.
Yeah, same here. So that was the shot makers category. So that one again, you're starting off with the Titleist T100, the Strixon ZX7 Mark II, the Callaway Apex CB, Mizuno Pro 243, and the Ping Blueprint S. So the next category we move into is pure enjoyment, and these are irons that basically you could just pull out of the bag or, go get fit and just have fun playing with. They look good, they feel good, they're not, they're forgiving, they go a long way, they kind of do it all. But it's just one of those things where you just have fun playing with them. It makes the game a little bit easier. And, so it's kind of an interesting one. Again, we're going to have, almost every one of these other than two we've kind of already mentioned, which isn't a shock when you hear the list. They're all really good irons. So, and we'll start with the pure enjoyment, the Ping G430. We talked about it before. It's just that iron that Ping has just refined over the years, and they just keep making it better. They don't miss. If you just want to go have fun playing golf, it would be hard not to grab if you just said, hey, go on the second swing wall, grab a set of irons that you're just going to have fun and go play with, beverage in the hand, whatever. G430 would be a tough one to pass up as you walk by that wall, because it looks good, it's going to perform, you don't have to have a perfect swing, the ball's going to go, and you're probably going to hit some accurate shots and have a good time playing them.
Yeah, there's nothing that there's no issues or questions about this one, in the sense that if you're going to go out there and you're just trying to hit golf shots at your target, that's exactly what Ping G430 accomplishes. We talked about the technology and how it looks, and it's a much better look than maybe the past models. It's in terms of pure enjoyment for the masses, I very deserving for the G430 here.
Yep. And then another one that we've talked a good amount about, I feel like it's on here a lot, the TaylorMade P790. Again, I think it's, as you mentioned before, the tech that's backed into it, the foam filled. It's just, again, one of those ones that you can just line up, point, shoot, and you're probably going to hit a pretty straight ball towards your target. It's pretty consistent, and you're just going to have fun hitting shots with that, and you're not going to get as frustrated with those misses because they're just not going to come out as bad.
Right, and it's so long too. Like, it's probably longer than the irons you're playing. So that in itself is probably a little bit fun. So the P790, I'm not surprised at all to see that on this list here.
Yep. And then, of course, I mean, as you mentioned it, the trophy case is pretty full. Srixon's
Yep.
ZX5 Mark II makes it onto here. And again, I think, you and I have talked about it in the other categories a lot, that this has been, chosen in. I mean, good feel, good look, ton of tech. It's long, it's straight. I mean, it's just one of those, you don't have to really think about it a whole lot. You don't have to worry about it. You're just going to go out and hit the ball solid.
I think it's interesting. I wanted to point out now, I just kind of thought of this, but like it says something about the ZX5 Mark II that it's in the pure enjoyment category here. We had it in the most tech-packed category. When there is a ZX4 Mark II, that is a fantastic iron in its own right. So, but I think it says something that the ZX5 is so... It is very forgiving and so playable that it can kind of match up into these different categories for these different golfers. So, the ZX5 Mark II is fantastic. I can see why it's gotten so much great feedback in the testing that I've done. It's if you're kind of starting out, maybe you've been playing golf, say, for a year or so, and you're really trying to get your first sort of set of irons, a real set where you're going to play a lot more and move that handicap up, say under 25 or under 20. This is a really good one to start with.
Yeah, and it's one that probably stay in your bag for a while. I mean, I know there's always people always mention when they start getting into the game and they kind of they finally go get fit, all that, going, well, what if I get a little better? I have aspirations of playing better or whatever. How long are these irons going to last? And I think an iron like the ZX5 or any in this category, if you get to that level where you're into that iron, you're probably can be a low single digit, still play it with a whole lot of success, and it's not going to really limit you in any way. I mean, any of these irons really in this category.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll finally get into two new ones we can talk about.
There we go.
So we go with the Mizuno JPX 923, the hot metals, the standard hot metal. What do you got on those?
Just a ton of ball speed with these. I think, if you were to do a kind of a comparison, say, of all the irons on this list, and you tested the ball speeds, this would be up there, if not the fastest. It's incredibly fast, even across the face. And so from that perspective, there's a ton of potential enjoyment out there to be had with this set in the bag.
Yep, and I like with this one too, where they kind of went with it a little bit. I think for me, when I kind of saw the lineup, I thought these would kind of be a little too close to the JPX 923 Forged or the Pro, and I was like, well, how close are all three of these irons going to be? Because there's a lot of hot metal irons at the moment. And then when you saw them, you said, okay, they definitely made these just a touch bigger, a little bit, just a hair more offset, just a touch thicker top line. And I think it fits perfectly in the line once you saw it. When you, like I said, on paper, I thought it was a little confusing, but once you saw it, I said, this is perfect for the player who needs it. And this is that player who needs just that little bit more distance, that little bit more forgiveness. The JPX 923 Pro, it definitely has its own little slot. And it's a good looking iron that produces a ton of speed. And if you go into a fitting and your first objective is, I want to hit it a little farther. I want to be, maybe not a club, but I want to have a little shorter club into these par fours or then these par threes, whatever. This is a great iron that you're going to get good feel, great sound. There's that Mizuno look, and they're just going to perform really well, and you're going to get that distance out of them. So a really solid iron on this list.
Agree completely with that.
And then the Titleist T200, the slightly, the multi-piece iron from Titleist there. I mean, I actually have the T200s in my 150 set, my 4 and 5 iron of the T200s, and I do say easy to hit. They go in the air. They're long. I remember the first time I hit the 5 iron on the course, I, was shocked at how far it carried. I mean, it just really is an easy set to hit. And again, like a Titleist, you set it down, it doesn't look super big. It doesn't look, it doesn't have a ton of offset. The top line's not super thin, but it's not bad. And you would think, again, I think you mentioned on one of them how you don't see the back of it. You only see a sliver in like the 4 iron. The rest of it you don't see the backs, and you would think you would. But the other thing too, Titleist, such an improvement in feel and sound on the T200 from last year to this gen.
That's what I was going to mention, is how much cleaner it looks, and the sound is way better. And they even, when we got to chat with Titleist about it, they, mentioned right away, like, we know we have some improvement that could be had with this T200, talking about the previous model, and they really cleaned it up nicely. It sounds fantastic, it looks fantastic, and then you got all the, player's distance performance that you could want in this T200 model. So really good one here for sure.
Yep, and they didn't go too crazy with the low spin. I mean, when you get a lot of these irons, they're pretty low spin irons, but they didn't go too crazy, too low. So, you don't have to worry so much about, hit it out of the rough. You get some crazy flyer or, a big hot spot or something like that, or a spot on the face. They really are consistent for, being a multi-piece kind of longer distance iron. So that is the pure enjoyment category. And again, we've got the Ping G430, TaylorMade P790, Srixon ZX5 Mark II, Mizuno JPX 923 Hot Metal, and the Titleist T200. So now we move into the category that is interesting, because I think the most people want to read it. It gets probably the fewest fits out of everything. Right. If you look at percentages in terms of fittings, these get the absolute fewest by a mile.
Yep.
It's Best Blades. And the blades are still around. I mean, we still see them on tour, even though I feel like when we look on tour, there's more people kind of transitioning into more cavity back styles and things like that, or we're seeing even more blended sets from players who traditionally played blades. But yeah, the blades is an interesting one. Like I said, everybody wants to know what the best blade is. Much of them, like me, I can't hit a blade. I mean, I could maybe, get a couple holes in, right, or I swing the ball okay, but I'm not playing a blade. But yeah, but the best blades is one that people are all about. I got to think that probably at Second Swing, you guys don't fit a ton of blades in fitting. There's probably a few. You probably have some really good players who come in, and it fits into that category. But I got to think that percentage-wise, the other categories are probably far, far more popular when you look at your fitting data over the over the year.
Yeah, you'd be very correct about that. And it's just due to the build of them, right? I mean, they're less forgiving. They're not going to give you as much distance, and those two things right there are usually enough to deter most players. But you're absolutely right in that there are definitely so many skilled players out there that love that look. It can definitely work the ball both ways. They're consistent enough where there's definitely some benefit for these irons.
Yep. So we'll start it out and we'll go. I don't think anybody's shocked. The first one on the list, Mizuno Pro 241. How do you feel about the 241?
Yeah, I mean, that's the least surprising thing I think in this entire list here is that Mizuno's flagship blade iron for the year is in this category. Classic feel. I think they've somehow improved that, which I didn't really think was possible with their kind of forging process. The feel is almost better, and so with that, it's fantastic. I mean, there's darn near a perfect blade iron, the Mizuno Pro 241.
Yep. Yeah, it's got a great thing. I like how this year they kind of, with all the Pro Series stuff, added just a little bit of bounce on the sole, so turf interaction might be a little bit better. Might not dig quite as much as maybe some previous models if you're a real steep player or play in soft conditions. But you're right. I mean, it's just a classic look. When you pull out of the box, you just kind of know what it is. It's beautiful, and it's that iron that when you kind of walk through the halls of Second Swing, you pick up and you just kind of wish you had the game to play it, and then you set it back down and you keep moving to what really fits your game.
It is fun to see people actually do that in the store. Exactly what you're referring to. It's like, oh man, they pull it, they look at it, and they're like, geez, this is elegant, and then they put it back, and then they walk to the next section.
Yep. And then we'll get into the Titleist, the 620 MB. This is that iron that I feel like has been in the market for 20 years. It just seems that way. But again, I think you're right. This is a classic Titleist blade, real simple, muscle on the back, super clean. The look of it is, a little edgier, a little boxier than the Titleist T-Series stuff. But again, I think, for that player, whether you're a player on tour playing 620s, but it's just, really classic look. I like the Titleist over the past, not so much recent, but I mean, 10 years ago, whatever, they didn't necessarily have the softest feeling blade, I felt like. And now that 620 MB plays in that category. It's super soft. Just overall, a really clean, classic look.
Yeah, I think it says something when, manufacturers don't update something right away, or they leave, let it kind of breathe a little bit. And that typically is because it is doing well, or it's a really good golf club. I think we've seen Ping do that over the years with, say the I-210 was kind of their player's cavity for the longest time. And I think now they're kind of approaching that with the 620 MB and the CB, both of them, but especially the MB, really good look and feel. If you kind of like the sharper lines a little bit, you're going to like the kind of the shape of the 620 MB. So really good, and not surprised to see it here.
Yep. And then we go to the Srixon Z-Forge 2. And I think, Srixon, great iron, but this one is probably the least known of all the Srixon irons at the moment. What do you kind of feel about the Forge 2?
Yeah, this is the one I've done the least testing on, so that kind of rings in true. But a fantastic look. I mean, it's kind of everything that you would want and expect from Srixon, given how much they've been mentioned in the last hour by us. So it's the Z Forged 2. It's awesome. I like the way they've kind of even refined the look a little bit from the Z Forged. I think a lot of players have liked it, and they've seen some tour adoption with it already.
Yeah, I look at this one here. It's probably the biggest blade on this list in terms of pure size. If you don't like stuff super compact, it's got a little more size to it, and of course that Tour Diesel is just so good. The turf interaction's phenomenal. I know some blades can get a little sharp, leading edge, things like that. This one here definitely very playable, and to my eye has probably the best look just because it has a little more real estate there to kind of hit the ball if you made me play a set of these. Mm-hmm. And then we go to the Ping Blueprint T. I think this is one that, again, I think Ping kind of nailed the sound and feel, and Ping hasn't necessarily always been perfect in these category type irons. The original Blueprint was massive on tour, extremely small. This one I feel like it's just a little bit bigger, but it feels great. It sounds great, and it actually is probably a little more playable than it looks. It's got a little bit of tech packed into it, so it's a little more playable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think when I did some testing, I tested the Blueprint T and the Blueprint S, and in terms of feel, it was a slightly softer feel with the T, but I like the look on the backside of it. It's kind of unique in that there's not really any sharp lines. It's very, very clean. Nope. I like the look that they kind of went with there. And to your point, I mean, I think they've done what they needed to do to kind of reinsert themselves in a big way into this sort of blade / player's cavity category. Obviously, they have the Blueprint S, they have the I-230, and then now the Blueprint T is sort of that blade. Really good performer, and it definitely belongs here. Yeah.
No, it's definitely a solid iron. And then the final to round it out, the Callaway Apex MB. A little bit. I feel like a little bit different than the Apex Pro and CB. It's a little edgier, a little sharper lines on it, especially that back cavity. It's a little more edgy. Again, I like what they did with the sole, with the pre-worn leading edge. While it probably has the least amount of bounce and probably digs the most out of the 3 Pro irons, it's still better, and the turf interaction is still pretty good. I've got it in my pitching and gap wedge. I've got the 10 and 11 iron in my set, so I've been hitting those, and I do have to say, I mean, when you hit them, they're extremely soft. They feel great. It's got that solid thud when you hit it solid, and they do. They're small though. They're compact, so you got to be a little precise.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, in terms of the size you talked about, I think of this, I would, if I were to sort of guess, I mean, I don't have them in front of me, but if I were to guess, this is the smallest one, at least to look at a dress, but still fantastic in terms of everything that someone would want in this category. Great look, great feel. Obviously, the workability's there, and you can kind of have that versatility of hitting all kinds of different shots. So the Apex NB, for sure, that as long as Callaway's releasing an Apex NB iron, it probably belongs in this category.
Yep. I'd agree. So that was the best blade category, and that one's going to be, again, the Mizuno Pro 241, Titleist 620 MB, Srixon Z Forge 2, and the Ping Blueprint T, and Callaway's Apex MB. So we went through all the categories. Those are all the irons for the Best Irons Awards. But I want to go back, and I always love asking, because this is, there's always arguments of what should have been on, what shouldn't, whatever. What is kind of, out of any category, what is one iron that you're kind of shocked you didn't see in any of the categories listed?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go back to what I mentioned with the Srixon ZX4 Mark II, but I'm also going to even pivot again to one that one of our fitters just loves this one, and it's actually his favorite game improvement iron of the year, and it's a little bit less expensive than some of these other ones, and that's the Cleveland Zipcore XL. It's a little bit different. It's kind of got a bigger hitting area. The club face itself is a little bit longer from heel to toe, but I think that's inviting for a lot of players, and so that one I'm going to give kudos to one of our fitters, Kevin Kraft. He's at our Columbia store, and he just swears by those in fittings this year, so I'll give him kudos on that one. And I have tested it, and it's fantastic. So that's what I'll say for my I guess what we got left off the list, if you will.
And I'll even give you a second. If you got a second one, it kind of felt like you might have had a second. If you have a second, you can go that. I've got 2. So
okay. I'll add that. I'll go ZX4 Mark II, and I'll go Cleveland Zip Core XL. So those will be my two. Even more, I guess, awards for Strixon and Cleveland. That's all this is going to be, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right on the ZX4. I think that is a really underrated iron. I think visually it looks really good for what it is. For being a bigger kind of big game improvement iron, it doesn't look that way. And then also the performance of it's good. It's long, but to me it wasn't like insanely long where you'd have to worry about like, oh man, where's my gapping going to be? Yeah, where's my gapping going to be at the top and the bottom of the bag? I'm going to have real problems there. But I felt like it was long, forgiving. It went straight. It was a really, really good iron that, has kind of slid under the radar this year. My first one is going to be more of the shot makers is the Cobra King Tour. I think that iron is a really just great iron. It kind of blends, that shot making. It's got some spin. It looks good. It feels good. It just kind of does it all. I kind of put it in that, it maybe plays in between T100 and T100S, but a really solid iron that I think, again, just I'm kind of shocked it didn't quite make it on this list. I thought it for sure would, and in that shot makers category, I think it would have played well in there. And then my best overall, or I don't know if it would go overall or it would be more. I'd probably go most tech packed, but I think the PXG 0317T, or I think they call it like the Tour Filled now. I think they changed the name on it slightly. Not everybody has it, and I think that's the issue, is that most fitters maybe don't have access to it. I think it's a great iron. I think it's just, unfortunately, not enough people have had it in their hands to really hit it. But I think it's a great hollow body, multi-piece, filled iron. Looks really compact, looks really good, but when you don't hit it perfect, you can still get away with some shots. So I thought that one is one that, people it's going to slide under the radar a little bit as well, that people just maybe won't get their hands on it unless they go to a specific place that has it. So those were my two that are kind of the snubs in a way. But every year there always is, whether it's member choice, fitter's choice, it's always snubs. So, but yeah, that is our 2024 best irons. So Drew, thank you so much, man. Always absolute pleasure having you on. Great to hear all your thoughts, expertise, and all that on all these irons. Really appreciate you taking this hour out of your day to join us on here and talk some irons.
Well, yeah, we're just talking about golf clubs. I mean, we could do this for several more hours if you wanted to.
That's right. We'll break it off into shafts and whatever, wedges. We'll just do it all. So.
For sure.
But that was the best of list. So thank you very much, and we'll do this again soon.
Sweet. Thank you for having me.